there you are.
Rich is using a device that could record or broadcast this call.
Yeah, you are the man. I just put you up on the screen.
Well, I'm a man. I don't know if I'm the man.
Like Harry said, the man.
Chase Utley, you are the man.
All right, cool. Now, this didn't work before that. All right. Now it does. All right. And it says we're streaming somewhere onto Facebook. So we'll trust that it's going out somewhere. All right. Now I'm going to hit this button to record. You almost ready?
I'm ready. Ready when you are.
All right. Here we go. I'm going to hit this button here. All right. It's time for Phillies Talk Podcast, the longest-running independent show talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. Opening day for spring training 2021. And hello, my name is Rich Baxter. Joining me this week, as usual, Mr. Matt Veasey. How are you, Matt?
Hey, Rich. Good afternoon. How are you?
All right. We have something to be really happy about today. The Fighting Phillies are back on a diamond, and they're back playing baseball.
Celebrate good times. Come on. It's here in Philly. It's a pouring rain. I was out making a few runs earlier. 42 degrees. It's a chilly, cold, rainy day here in Philly. But from Lakeland, Florida, in Central Florida, where the Phillies are playing the Detroit Tigers, I heard the broadcasters earlier mention that it was 85 and sunny there. So twice as warm in Lakeland, Florida, as it is here in Philadelphia. So spring is in the air, at least down there in Florida.
Yeah, I was hoping we would get some of those southern trade winds up here today, but no dice, as you said, sort of overcast, rainy, miserably, typical February type of day out there for us. But baseball's back, so to speak, not being broadcast today in the Philadelphia market, but it's on MLB.com. And let's take a look at that.
Yeah, if you have the MLB audio, which he did have a double today. He had a nice sliding catch in the outfielder. He's a nice little player, Moniak. I don't think he's never going to be a star, but if he ends up, for the Phillies being a serviceable, say, sixth outfielder, or maybe he can develop into a fourth or fifth outfielder, and that's something. It's better than nothing. But he's a nice little player, is what he is. Right now, he's at that backup level, unless or until he can prove differently. But again, like you said, he had a hit today, he had a double, and nice slide and catch in the outfielder. So the Mick is off and running.
Yeah, Adam Hazley starting in center field, vying to be the starter, actually. Hit a home run, leadoff home run on Sunday here, first day of spring training. So that's a way to impress the boss a little bit.
Sure, and a good thing about that for me was he does it off a legit major league, pitcher. Alexander has some innings under his belt in the big leagues, and it was against a left-hander. So, Hazley, for my money, he's a first-round draft pick. I believe he was something like 6th overall, Rich, or 7th overall, and that he's got a couple of overall, if you want to count the at-bats, not much more than a cup of coffee so far in the big leagues. It's, I think, especially considering the firepower around him in this offense for the Phillies, I think it's time to see what they have in Adam Hazley on an everyday basis. He homered on the second pitch of the game today off a left-hander, and you have to give the guy a chance to face left-handers every once in a while. So certainly encouraging to see. It's early, obviously, first game of the year, but good start for Adam Hazley.
Yeah, and as you said at the start of the show here, I keep forgetting about the MLB, the radio offering that they do through MLB. That's always a good tip for people, especially you can listen to it on your phone or, it's very portable, as well as the MLB.TV. I think they're giving a free 7-day trial to that. You have to put a credit card in and cancel before your 7th day, but right there you can check out some preseason baseball and some broadcasts if you want. Stay on for the whole season. But, I'm a little more excited this year, naturally, than last year. There was a lot of question marks last year, if we remember correctly. Well, at this time there wasn't, but maybe a couple weeks from now, that last time there was. But it's rekindled the fire in me for baseball a little bit.
As it should, Spring training has started. Pitchers and catchers have been here now for almost 2 weeks. The position players came in this week. A couple of the guys were late due to COVID protocols or personal situations, but all the important big guns are here now. Everybody's checked out, and they're in their first game today. Tomorrow, Aaron Nola gets to start in the first game at Clearwater. Contribution there. Moniak had the double. Phillies only have 4 hits so far today, but again, it's a lineup that's littered with backups or guys who are trying to make an impression, who at best probably end up either as deep substitutes on another team's roster or will end up down at AAA this year. They went with Jeff Mathis at catcher, batting cleanup. Mathis is a veteran catcher. He possibly could make this roster. The Phillies didn't really run out anybody who fans have to be concerned about too much here. I guess it's good that Kingery and Bohm got 3 plate appearances under their back, got to see some pitching. Didn't do anything with it on this afternoon, but we got a long way to go, and fans will see the team at Clearwater tomorrow. I think there'll be something like 2,000 or so fans allowed in the ballpark. That's what the Tigers had today. And the Tigers are pretty much sold out for their entire spring training, since there's only 2,000 fans are going to be allowed into the ballpark. I would imagine that the Phillies are the same. So Clearwater, we're open tomorrow. It's a brand new name for the ballpark down there. I'll have to get that, mention that to fans in a little bit, but no more Spectrum Field.
Year. So gone is the Bright House Field and Bright House Network or whatever it was a long time ago. But sign of the times. A lot of stadiums getting more money for naming rights and different companies stepping up to the plate. I think one of the Major League Baseball teams, Milwaukee, I believe, maybe changing its name this year. Did a podcast earlier today with my buddy Gary Mack, who let me know about that. Miller Park, no more. It's now named American Family Ballpark after an insurance company. So, we had never heard of that before in this area. So, interesting the way these stadiums are taking up different names. It adds a different dimension to what's going on there.
Yeah, most of the big league ballparks end up with, 25, 30-year ballpark naming rights. I believe Citizens Bank Park may have been a 30-year, naming deal. So, unless there's an extension that I'm not privy to, they'll have that name for at least the next, a little more than a decade. The minor league, especially the spring training venues, they end up getting something like usually like 5-year deals. So yeah, it's I think you're right there. Baycare Ballpark, named after a health, facility, health operation. So same ballpark, still a beautiful ballpark down there. Whether fans remember it as Bright House Network Fields or Spectrum Fields, beautiful ballpark. We still have the Tiki Bar out there in left field. So if fans are going down there this year, I'm sure it's a lot more limited, crowds than
Be like a vicious black market going on with baseball fans pitting against one another for tickets this year.
Well, you're giving me some news there, Rich, because I had a busy day today. I really haven't had a lot of chance to do much. I was on the road for a little bit of the day, so I was listening to the game on the MTV audio on my phone while I was driving around. But so you're hearing something about 30%. I hadn't heard that. The last I had heard was, the outdoor venues were still 2,500 people in Pennsylvania. So you're hearing something different now?
Well, unless, of course, there's, locality issues as far as fans being allowed in a certain area. That's what was generally circulated. They'd like to see up to 30%, but yeah, I guess we're going to have to check the local.
You're saying they'd like to see. I mean, what does that mean? Who's they? And
in other words,
where's that coming from?
On a podcast I did earlier today, the great Gary Mack brought that up. 30% is what, the MLB would like to see as far as attendance figures. Now,
MLB would like to see that.
Yeah.
I understand that. Right now, we're not there. And the law in Pennsylvania at this point, restrictions put out by the health department are 2,500 fans maximum, and so that's what Philadelphia is going with. They just upped their outdoor limits to 2,500 for outdoor activities this past week. But both I think it was 2,500 for outdoor, 500 for indoor, and both the Flyers and Sixers, they're just not going to be able to have fans under those levels because it takes about 500 people just to run game day operations for the Flyers and Sixers at the center down there. So, between the teams, the officials, the broadcasting, the press and media, and then the actual people who they would have to have staff the facility to have fans in there, that comes to 500. So you're not going to see people until those those limits are raised by the Commonwealth. Uh-huh. You're not going to see fans at Flyers or Sixers games. And the Phillies at 2,500 for the outdoors, they're a little bit better off, but you're still probably 2/3 of that, maybe the number of fans at this point. Face the same restrictions as far as having to have the teams, the broadcasters, the officials, umpiring crews, the grounds crew, people that you would have to have in the media, the press, people you would have to have in the ballpark to facilitate fan operations, people to run and keep clean the restrooms. Are you going to have any concessions open? So, once you factor in all that stuff and it eats into your 2,500 maximum people, all those people count towards that maximum.
Wow.
So I've seen speculation that the Phillies might be able to have something like 1,200 fans in attendance at a game. Now, you're also going to have family members of the teams that are going to want to be there. And you figure each team has, say 30 players, roughly between the regular players and, some AAA guys who are going to be back and forth. So, how many family members are they going to want to have? So I think that will be, and the thing to keep an eye on is in the coming weeks is, will Pennsylvania raise those limits on outdoor numbers of fans that are allowed to attend at outdoor venues? And if Pennsylvania should raise those numbers, and I think there's a chance that they'll do that, especially if these COVID numbers continue to go down. We've got a third vaccine now that's been approved. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a one-shot deal. They're expecting a lot of shipments of that vaccine to begin rolling out in this coming week. So I think each week you're going to see an improvement in a slow but steady improvement in the numbers. You're already seeing it in the numbers of, fatalities and the number of illnesses and the number of hospitalizations. So hopefully as those numbers continue to go down, the number of people who get vaccinated continues to go up. They see these trends. I think what you'll see is a slow progression of an increase in the numbers of fans who are allowed at these both indoor and outdoor venues. And, right now, the Phillies could have. That's going to be a tricky proposition for the Phillies. It'll be interesting to see how they work that out.
Yeah, that's for sure. And try to keep a fair system at that. If you're talking 1,000 people, that's next to nothing in a big stadium like that. As some people pointed out, it's going to look like there's, just a handful of fans in the stands if the cameras pan over to them. But it's a big change from last year when there was nobody allowed in the stands. In the central part of the country, the Cleveland Indians, the Cincinnati Reds, all aiming for 10,000 fans, about 30%, 30%. Florida, 25% they're looking for. And let's face it, they don't get a lot of fans down in Florida usually. So maybe that's your place. You could go down and see a game once the season starts. If they go to something like that.
At the very least, Rich, it looks like it's my buddy here. I don't know if you can see him, but this is my buddy right there in the middle. That's cardboard cutout Matt Veasey. And I don't think that he's going to see any game action this year.
Right,
so
right.
I think I have a chance. Last year he saw, I guess, a couple dozen games. This year I think I'm going to out-attend him. From social media that a couple of the Phillies beat personnel beat writers were putting out on social media, and the 2,000 fans that were in the ballpark today at Lakeland were pretty well spread out. So it's not like they're putting those 2,000 fans right on top of one another. And as you said, Citizens Bank Park being a much larger facility, I'm sure they're going to spread them out. I would hope that they wouldn't stick people in the upper deck. I would hope that the Phillies, once they do start selling tickets, if it's only going to be 1,200, then 2,500, maybe 5,000 at some point fans who are allowed in the ballpark, you would hope that they would strategically place them around the first couple of decks and adjust prices accordingly to. There should be some type of pandemic, I think, some type of pandemic discount for the ticketing, just for the fans having to go through that idea of the possibility, of coming down to the ballpark, under these types of conditions, where there's still slight risk.
Yeah.
Are they going to put anything on the tickets? Is there going to be a disclaimer? It used to be the old disclaimer of, if you were hit by a ball or something like that. Well, now is there going to be like if you get COVID, it's not our fault. You chose to come down here. that
exactly.
type of deal.
Yeah,
So you won't see me down there until I get vaccinated. But once I get vaccinated, I'm not going to be concerned about going to the ballpark or anywhere else. So it's game on then for me.
yeah, at the minimum, free parking. That's always been one of my beefs over the years. How much the parking is? It was what, $19 the last I remember it. Adds
Not sure.
adds a bit of cash to the day at the end for you, but we'll have to see. That's all part of the mix that we're going to have to experience when it starts in April. April Fool's Day is the first day of the MLB season, the regular season. And will they have the piped in fans noise? I'm sure they probably will still, because, a small smattering of people like that aren't going to be generating enough fan noise, so to speak, if you want to call it that. So we'll probably hear that on the broadcast. And again, I'll divert back to my other podcast I do, the Baseball Talk radio show. Gary Mack brought up the fact that one of the teams, Toronto Blue Jays, has let their radio staff go. They won't be covering the games via the radio this year. They'll just simulcast the television broadcast on the radio slot. So no color commentary coming from radio announcers this year for Toronto. They're putting them through the ringer, those poor Blue Jay fans.
And leads to a good question: will they even be playing baseball in Toronto at some point? That was one of the big issues last year, where the Blue Jays had to play their home games in Buffalo, which was really an exaggerated hitter's ballpark. So it's another issue that'll be interesting to see how they develop over the course of the coming weeks. Will the Blue Jays be playing in Toronto, or will they have to go back to Buffalo, at least for part of the season, the beginning of the season? I'd heard that the tentative plan might be that they're going to actually play regular season games at their spring training ballpark, which I believe is Dunedin.
Yeah.
So, that's just another interesting development. Spring training facilities used for regular season MLB games. Just another twist, to this entire COVID mess that we've been dealing with for almost a year now. It's funny, maybe this time last year, spring training was underway and people weren't really, I don't think, thinking about ending spring training. And it was about a week and a half from now, maybe no more than 2 weeks from now, all of a sudden everything can grind into a halt. So it's been about a year now we've been dealing with this, and we're still going to be dealing with the effects of it as far as fan participation. The players are still being tested regularly. You're going to see this going on some level into and through the 2021 season, and I think easing slowly and exponentially as we move through the season. With the hopes that by the time we get to the end of 2021, maybe the very back end of the 2021 season into the postseason, that we can have some regular baseball with normal baseball crowds by the fall, and hopefully 2022 a completely normal season. I think that's our most realistic scenario.
Yeah, that sounds so good, especially compared to this season and last season, when we really had to buckle down, enjoy the games from home if you wanted to, watch television, that sort of thing, and stay under wraps and watch the games. But you brought up the fact that Toronto may be playing in Florida. That might be the best place for them to start off the season. Certainly not in northern New York near Buffalo. That probably would be the worst part of the country to try to start their season. But that facility is so nice down there in Florida. I happened to stop by there last year when I went down to Florida. But I'm just thinking about the little restaurants around there. They're going to experience a nice little boom down there for an extended period of time with an attraction like the Blue Jays playing other teams. So it's good for them, It's a shame still. I'm sure Canada's still shut down. And as you said, I wasn't aware that in Pennsylvania it was 2,500 still at the max. But we're at the end of February. We got another month of March. And maybe they'll up that a little bit, I think. Hopefully, knock on wood, that everything keeps going well, so to speak. I mean, we're still having a record amount of COVID deaths and things like that, but I think it's made a turn for the better, possibly. So we'll see.
Yeah, and as you said, those communities down there in Florida, they could use a little bit of an economic boost after losing at least half of spring training last year, and so they're going to take a hit this year. So a place like Dunedin in that area, getting a little boost from a couple of weeks of Major League ball games, that'll be helpful to them.
Yep. So taking a look at the Phillies 40-man roster here, and depth charts and things like that for starting pitching. It seemed like Joe Girardi, I saw an interview with him about, the bullpen, the way it's been bolstered in the offseason. He's really bullish on the Phillies, and I'm hoping it transcends to some success this year. We were talking about that in a couple podcasts that we've done already on the Phillies this year, saying if they could have just fixed little areas here and there, we would have saw maybe a playoff team last year. But they certainly have the staff in line to do it this year, make the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if they can do that. And I lost your audio. Not sure if it's me or...
I think I got you back.
There you go.
Yeah, we talked about it on the last podcast where very obvious to any Philly fan who followed the team during the year, the bullpen cost them a playoff spot and probably cost them a battle for the division crown last year. They missed the playoffs on the final day of the season. I mean, had they won over Tampa Bay, they'd have been in the playoffs. So there's no doubt that the bullpen, which I believe gave up the second most runs in the league in all of MLB last year, that was their main problem. Now this year, I think Dombrowski's done his best to address that. You got left-hander Jose Alvarado and right-hander Archie Bradley who came in. You got guys like that they've added, like Sam Coonrod. They have non-roster invitation guys who have MLB experience, who I would be shocked if they didn't end up on the Phillies final roster. Guys like Brandon Kinsler and Hector Rondon, left-hander they signed just recently, Tony Watson, a guy who was one of the few pitchers who did well today. Brian Mitchell threw a couple of nice innings today. So Neftali Feliz, who's used to be a nice shutdown closer and has missed time with injury over the last few years. Might be a long shot, but if he's healthy, he can go back to maybe start out at AAA and prove himself as far as health-wise and results-wise, and he could help down the road. So I think between the definite additions that they've made to the roster and guys like Bradley and Alvarado, and then the non-roster guys who I think are almost assuredly, to me, going to make it, and guys like Kinsler and Rondon and Watson, the Phillies, and then you still have a guy like Hector Neris, who he's fine as long as you don't count on him as far as putting pressure on him to be the closer every day. So the Phillies bullpen to me looks extremely well positioned for a major improvement this year, and if they just go from the bottom of the pack to the middle of the pack, this is certainly a playoff contender. And if they go from the bottom of the pack to anywhere among, say, the top third of the league, they're going to battle for a division crown. That's just, assuming everybody stays healthy. Guys like Harper and Real Muto and those types of players stay healthy. And your Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. As long as the key players stay healthy for the bulk of the season, I see no reason why this shouldn't be a playoff team this year.
That sounds really good. I'd love to see it. Fighting Phil's taking on another team tomorrow, and just we're going to hear a different team every day, just like Matt said to start. Aaron Nola going tomorrow. Nova got lit up, as you alluded to. 135 ERA for Ivan Nova on his first day. He can only get better from here, but let's see what happens with that. Phillies kicking off their 2021 spring training season today, so we thought we'd get a podcast out, and I recorded the podcast, supposed to be streaming, so hopefully somebody out there will be able to see that stream live. And Matt, before we wrap it up, let's tell the folks where they can find us on the internet.
Well, I'm still writing at my website, mattveasey.com. That's MattVeasey.com, mattveasey.com. Not writing there so much anymore right now, Rich. Probably when the ball club gets going, I'll be writing a little bit more. But every single day at Phillies Bell on Twitter and on, I try to share a little bit on Instagram, but certainly very active on Twitter at Phillies Bell. That's the best place for Phillies fans to find me, to find daily Phillies updates on what's happening with today's ball club, as well as some important or interesting historical facts about the club. So daily at Phillies Bell on Twitter.
That's awesome. And of course, you can find the Phillies Talk Podcast over at anchor.fm/Phillies. And that's where you can find the show. Of course, you can find us on Apple Music now. Apple Podcasts is what they call themselves. Google Podcasts, and you can hit subscribe to that. Stitcher, Spotify, those places you can find us as well. A few stats for us on the listeners out there, and I'll go to the screen. Thanks for listening, everyone, and tuning into the Phillies Talk Podcast. We'll talk to you again.
Go Phils. Stay healthy, everyone.